To the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors meeting, this day, November 14th, 2017. We're coming back from closed session. Liz, is there anything to report out of closed session?
No reportable action.
Great. I'd like to take this opportunity for a brief moment of reflection. Thank you. Supervisor Berkowitz, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Introduction of new employees. Oh, excellent. Come on up.
Good morning. I'm Melody Cannon-Cutts. I'm Program Manager for the Public Health Branch for the Department of Health and Human Services. And I am very pleased to introduce Amber Weir. She is our new Health Education Coordinator working with the Tobacco Use Prevention Program. Most of you, I'm sure, already know Amber. She has extensive history working with the community, both at the Chamber of Commerce and also with the Small Business Development District. She's served in other capacities within the community, and we are just ecstatic to have her join us.
Excellent.
Welcome.
Amber, you're certainly welcome to come and say something if you'd like. Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Oh yes, put her on the spot.
Well, thank you for having me and introducing me. I'm very excited to be the new TUP coordinator, Health Education Coordinator for Tobacco Use Prevention Program. And I might be coming up here again to say a few more things.
Certainly will.
We'll just come back.
Amber, are you going to be continuing your schoolwork you've been doing on the Joe Hamilton Crescent Elk School?
Oh, so yeah, I used to work for the Safe Routes to School program. That
Safe Routes, something.
Yeah, so that program it ended. It was a two-year grant. So, but I am happy to report that the walking and bicycling numbers over exceeded our expectations for
Good
growth.
working with you.
Any other questions?
No, I think that's good.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you,
very much.
Amber.
I'm excited.
Welcome aboard. All right, at this time, I'd like to request any deletions, corrections, or additions from the board members to the agenda. Anything at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to our consent agenda. I'd like to pull for discussion item number 6 from the consent agenda. Hoping to get the CAO to make a brief report on where we're at with that. And then also on item number 5, in your board packets, the resolution dates were not corrected. The resolution needed to be updated to 2018 through 2020 and actually reflected 2016 through 2018. So I'd like to have that amended in our notes. Is there any other changes or corrections that folks needed? Okay. Public comment on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead.
Move for approval.
Oh, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't see it either.
I like still move for approval.
Now, if you could come to the dais and please state your name for the record when you approach and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Good morning.
I'm Jane Johnston, and I thought that we would be discussing the hosts in the county parks today, but obviously it's not. So I will speak now. I live across the street from Camp Memorial Park, and I'm concerned about not having a host there. I know the plan is to have a host there, but I'm wondering if somebody really will come in the wintertime. We used to travel with the travel trailer, and we went to Arizona in the wintertime. And I've seen the damage done when there is no host. Toilets just ripped out of the floor, plus other things. So that is my main concern. And we hope you can work it out, because we really do need a host there and in all the parks.
Sure. No, those
And-
comments are appreciated.
Yeah, and when we were traveling, we always felt much more comfortable in a park with a host.
Mhm.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Jean. Appreciate it. Bev, please.
My name is Beverly Westbrook. I live at Smith River, and I'm here to speak on the same issue. There's been a lot of drug transaction going on at that park, and I'm old enough that I remember Ed Kemp, who dedicated that in memory of his son, who was killed in the South Pacific. And I think it would be very distressful if he could see what's going on. When there hasn't been a camp host there, people have come and ripped off the sinks and the toilets, and there's a lot of crime in Smith River anyway, and I think it would be more of a problem for the county if you don't have someone there to monitoring, not only at the Kemp Memorial Park, but the other county parks, unless you want to sell the parks to a private enterprise or something. But if you want to keep them, I think you should keep them safe and clean and welcoming.
Thank you, Bev. Appreciate your comments. Jay, I don't know if there's anything we can address at this time, but if you could, for the comfort of our community.
Well, yeah, Alan's not available today. I think he's on a training, but just to reiterate to the public, the idea is to not eliminate camp hosts, but to bring in new camp hosts. So there's a process. As the building maintenance and park superintendent, the new one, Alan is going through a process of getting new agreements in place and dealing with some issues that he inherited, and will continue having camp hosts at all of the county parks.
Is there a timeline that you're aware of at this point?
I know that he has a number of people that have, if you want to call them applied, that are interested, but as far as a decision on those, I don't know.
Okay. We'll try to keep the community as updated best we can on those issues involving Camp Park. Very good. Public comment on consent? Please. Yep.
Yes, I don't know that having someone with just a high school diploma working in the district attorney's office really is good representation for our county. I think that they should have at least an AA degree or a paralegal certificate or something of that nature. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Any other comments on the consent agenda? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board. I believe we have a motion. And did we have a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Kylie, can you please pull the vote on items number 3 through 22 on the consent agenda, with item number 6 pulled for discussion?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. All right, we're going to go ahead and move to our timed agenda item at 10:05, which is our public comment period. Members of the public may address the board on matters which are within the jurisdiction of the board. If you're addressing the board regarding a matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to hold your comments until the board takes up that matter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Public comment, please.
Linda Sutter, 5th District. Good morning, Supervisors. The general public needs to know whether Chair Howard was less than truthful to the general public at a recent presentation to the Republican women in response to a question. Chair Howard said in an argumentative and confrontational tone he had no intent or contemplation to raise sales tax for the county. Yet, at a previous BOS meeting, he said he was contemplating raising sales tax, and here, members of the board, is his statement.
Do these things, and there's probably going to need to be steps in order for us to look long-term at solutions that might even involve the community considering an increased sales tax potentially, which are our discussions following a similar line to what Humboldt County did.
So in essence, members of the board, was Chair Howard less than truthful to the Republican women, or was he less than truthful to the rest of the members of the board? Also, and additionally, I thought that we were supposed to have, whether we were going to send a letter to Washington in regards to the last chance grade on the agenda, and I don't see that on the agenda, so I'm just kind of questioning your credibility. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments.
Chairman Howard, members of the board, I'd like to thank you for the next appointment for 2 years to the Golden Gate Bridge District. I'd like to give you just a little bit of update. We've, of course, finished the North Anchorage House and the roadway. We replaced that 300-foot of roadway by 90 feet, and that was quite a task because each night they would cut the pavement. It'd be a 12-foot section come out, and then a 12 by 25 section out, and then bring a new one in. And they built that over in Napa County to signal the curve that was in that road. And it was pretty interesting watching what they were doing. When they opened up, you were looking down into the Anchorage House, and it was just neat. A lot of good engineers. We have one more retrofit on the bridge, and that's this main span of 4,200 feet. They're projecting a cost of $660 million to do that. I think the latest figure to replace that bridge today is $1.2 billion, and we built it for $37 million back in 37. So I mean, or $35 million in 37. We finished the movable medium barrier. If you notice, there used to be just the little plastic cones, and they would move those back and forth, and people, it's hard for them to believe that that's what was separating the two traffics. And almost immediately after we put in the medium barrier, Gavin Newsom was involved in an accident. A car hit the barrier and shoved it over, and he was coming the other way. And if it hadn't been for that, it had been a head-on collision, and there would have been something drastic happen. Of course, we are doing the suicide barrier. That's in addition to being the net out there, the new traveler system underneath is involved there, and that's about 60% of that bid. So that's about $120 million. The net is about $80 million, which is, it's a lot of money, but I mean, the federal government stepped up and give us the extra money to do that, so we're doing it. And the latest thing that's going to happen is we're going to do away with the little toll booths that haven't been used since we started all electronic tolling, and they're going to build a gantry over that plaza, and that'll indicate you just drive by now, and if you don't have fast track, then they'll send you a bill. So. And some of you may have got a bill, and then all you do is pay it. So anyway, that little update of what we're doing. Our budget this year, $222 million. We've got, I'm on the Finance Committee, and we've got $71 million put away for OPEB. And I've talked to Jay pretty regularly about how the county's working theirs. I'm also chairman of government relations, and we go to Washington every year, and I never fail to get a shot in for Del Norte County when we meet with DOT or our Congress people or senators. So anyway, still a Del Norte resident. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jerry,
Jerry,
before you take off,
Jerry,
Jerry,
seems to be a few questions up here.
Easy questions.
These are all easy questions. The new way of payment where they take the picture and send you that's been in for over a year, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So have they done the revenue comparison to what it was before and the cost?
With the toll takers, we were spending
Well, you got to remember what we did for the last 5 years with that. We started downsizing we had up as many as 55 toll takers. And when we actually converted over, we were at 33. And we netted $3 million a year difference, because it does cost to do those electronics. In fact, we're just going through another rebuilding of the electronic system to do that. But whatever we do, when we put in the gantry, it'll accept that, you know, it's going to be high up, and it's not going to be down like we are currently, where they take a picture of your license plate, the front and the back. And then, the other thing we've done, starting, well, now I guess it's 2019, is everyone has to have a license plate on their vehicle when they leave the used car or the car dealer, where now you get that little tag in the front. And law enforcement did step up and say, yeah, you know, we'd like to know who's in that car, you know, if it's stolen or whatever. And it just so happened when we were doing our legislative work on that, the person or the two guys had kidnapped the cab driver in Los Angeles, stole his car, and drove it to San Mateo or San Jose, and they had taken someone else's license plate. So that probably would have still happened, but at least it kind of said, hey, you know, there's a problem out there with license plates. So you're going to be identified out there. Anyway.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Roger?
Yeah. Jerry, we've had this discussion before about the Golden Gate Bridge Authority supporting a bypass letter.
Yeah.
And I know you sit on the Government Relations Committee. Can that happen? It
Well,
certainly can't hurt to have another letter of support from the 101, and that's what the Golden Gate Bridge Authority is, and benefits Del Norte County.
We're after, from the Golden Gate Bridge side, what they tell me, they're after the same funds that we're after here. So what they're concerned with is that if they come out and support Del Norte County in their $1 billion project in last chance grade, that when they come after their money for redoing the bridge, they're going to say, oh, wait a minute, guys, you support Del Norte, we don't have money for you now. And I keep telling them, I said, that's a weak excuse, you know, I don't like that. And they have made it a policy not to support projects like in the Narrows there. In fact, we're fighting over $25 million. We thought we had it, and then Sonoma County thought they had it, and we end up losing it, and we only got $1 million out of it. But they wouldn't send a letter of support even on that when they leave Petaluma, they size down into that 2 lanes, and it's just a real mess. I know I've sent a letter myself.
Yes.
As support, but to get the district to do it is a little tough. And I tell them, I says, you know, there's roughly 18,000 cars a day that come over 101, and then even more so when you throw in 199 that go over that last chance grade. So, you know, I keep trying, Roger, but I'm not.
Well, you can understand our concern.
Oh, absolutely.
We are Del Norte County.
Yes,
And
yes.
I appreciate the fact that the bridge needs lots of work, but that's several hundred miles away, and most people in this room, I don't know, are traveling that into 101 and Golden Gate, over to Golden Gate. Beautiful it is. So I appreciate you bringing it to the authorities' attention again, that we'd very much appreciate it. It certainly can't hurt.
Well,
Have a letter of
it
support.
won't hurt anything if I can get them to do that.
Okay.
But like I say, every time I'm in Washington, I do bring up Del Norte County. I say, hey, you know, we got a problem up there, and you know, the higher-ups in DOT, they said, yeah, you know, like, well, I met with...
Thank you for continuing.
Yeah, you know, that's part of my job.
Thank you. Supervisor Berkowitz?
Jerry, how well is that suicide barrier working to prevent suicides?
Well, we're just in the process of constructing it. And what we know for facts is that wherever there is a net or a suicide deterrent,
they have had no suicides, and generally we have somewhere in the vicinity of 35 to 40 people a year take their lives off the bridge. We've done lots of different things. One of the recent things is that we've profiled the people who are jumpers, and what we found is certain times of the day, certain times of the week is when these things occur. So what we do, we send out more law enforcement people, our law enforcement people, to walk the bridge, and they cycle out there with bicycles. And if you, for an example, if you see someone kind of distraught, has no purse, no camera, that's one of the people you want to engage to start talking. And then, of course, we have a suicide call box on the bridge itself that they can call their hotline if necessary. So there's there's a lot of things we do. Most of the people up in this area say, well, what are you spending that kind of money for? Well, what's a life worth? Sometimes it's worth a lot, or at least in my estimation. Every life you can save is worth it. So, yeah, it's troublesome to see the statistics, but at the same time, people are going to do it. But we don't want them to do it. We want to help them wherever we can. But if we take away the ability to do it on the bridge, good for us. Well, we have one lady comes over from Sacramento every meeting. Her son had breakfast with us 3 years ago now. Every morning, she said they were having breakfast, at 8 o'clock in the morning. Everything's fine. He's a senior in high school in Sacramento. He leaves Sacramento, comes to the Bay Area, drives across the bridge, stops his truck in the middle of the bridge, jumps, 18 years old. If there's some way to talk to, she said that she had absolutely no idea the kid had any suicide thoughts. In fact, at Rotary last week, we had a gentleman, Gordon Colby, I think his name is, from Brookings, talk to us on bullying and suicide prevention for the North Coast. And it was pretty interesting of what's happening to these young kids in school. So the bullying that goes on, and that's probably the root to the start of a suicide issue. So, but anyway, it's there. Of course, I'm one of 19. I try to influence them as much as I can, but a lot of times those San Francisco people have their own thoughts, or the Bay Area, and not that I'm that liberal, but I do think that the suicide barrier is a necessary thing. And it's too bad it costs so much, but that's what it is. All right.
Thank you for your continued service,
All right.
Jerry.
Thank you.
Yep. In the consent agenda, there was a proclamation. Supervisor Berkowitz, do you mind reading that at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a proclamation in recognition and support of the Great American Smokeout. Whereas the American Cancer Society encourages all tobacco users to join the Great American Smokeout and quit smoking for at least one day. And whereas secondhand tobacco smoke, marijuana smoke, secondhand aerosol from electronic smoking devices, vapes, pose a health hazard to bystanders. And whereas people who live in multi-unit housing are more exposed to secondhand smoke, even when nobody smokes in their unit, and whereas harmful residues from tobacco smoke can be absorbed by and cling to virtually all indoor surfaces as long after smoking has stopped, and then be emitted back into the air, making this third-hand smoke a health hazard, especially to infants and toddlers. And whereas vulnerable people are disproportionately affected and suffer more health consequences from secondhand smoke exposure in their homes, especially people with low income, the elderly, and children. And whereas smoking is the #1 cause of fire deaths and leading cause of fire-related injury, and whereas there are many proven resources, many of them free, to help smokers quit. Therefore, be it proclaimed that the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors hereby recognizes and supports the American Cancer Society's Great American Smokeout on November 16th, 2017 in the county of Del Norte, and encourages all citizens who smoke or use, chew, dip tobacco, or e-cigarettes to demonstrate to themselves and their children that they can quit using nicotine by joining the American Cancer Society Great American Smokeout, passed and adopted this 14th day of November 2017, and it's signed by our chairman. And is there someone who would like to?
No.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very
Amber?
much.
All right. If you'd like to say something.
I would.
Good morning again.
Good morning again. So I brought some quit smoking kits for everybody, and I'll leave them at the desk. And then I also would like to introduce Trudy Adams, who is a member of our community coalition for a pathway to a tobacco-free community, to tell you why and how happy we are that you supported this Great American Smokeout and why it's so important in our community. She has a few facts, and I will hand you the flyer that she's using so you can look at those statistics.
Thank you so much for adopting the proclamation and approving that. So a few facts about tobacco in Del Norte. Percent of youth who use any tobacco is 22.7% in Del Norte. Throughout California, that's 13.8% in California whole, so we're 22% of that. The cost of smoking in California amounted $18.1 billion in 2009. The cost of smoking per resident varies among counties from $374 in Orange County to $805 in Del Norte County. So tobacco kills more people other than other causes combined. As you see below, there's in the corner, it says 20.5% of adults who smoke cigarettes in Del Norte. And then we have 12.7 throughout California. Now that has grown since 2014 and 2015 from 16.7% up to 20.5% in Del Norte. So it's grown 4%. Cigarette smoking causes more than 480,000 deaths annually, including nearly 42,000 deaths resulting from secondhand smoke exposure. Thank you again for adopting the proclamation, and it's nice.
Thank you very much. Please, Supervisor Gitlin.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Trudy.
Trudy, I just wanted to ask you a question.
Yes.
This is actually more alarming than I thought it was. The cost of smoking in Del Norte County, one of the poorest counties in the state, is $805 a year per person. Is that what you're saying for the smoker? This is what?
Oh, for
tax. Per person.
Per person.
Per resident in Del Norte County.
Per resident, not
per smoker.
Okay, per smoker. So what
person.
would
Those
be?
are our taxes going to help pay for all the costs that are related to smoking-related illness.
All right, so an average smoker in Del Norte, I don't know, I'm not a one, so an average smoker in Del Norte County, what's the cost to buy those cigarettes? And do you have a number on that?
It varies on your location and when
Pack
you
a
get them,
day,
but
Pack and a half a day,
I
20.
think the average is 7 from the differences. And your average smoker, if they're a pack-a-day smoker, I think it averages like $3,000 that they're spending a year on smoking.
Wow.
And it costs, yeah, it's an expensive addiction, and it's a real addiction, though. I mean, it's very, very, very hard to quit. I think the average smoker, it takes 4.7 times to quit. In my experience with smokers, it's been 13 to 24 times, with people in my family. So it's a serious issue. It's a financial issue, it's a health issue, and it's growing in Del Norte County, whereas the rest of California, it's going down. So that's alarming to me.
Thank you. Any other comments from supervisors? Very good. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate your support on these issues. I'd like to, had a little transition confusion there with public comment with Mr. Cochran coming up. Was there any other public comment?
Hello, thank you for taking my comments today, supervisors. My name is Paul Senishin. I work for the school district as their energy technician, and I live in the county. Lived here for 12 years. I have 2 small children. I'm a single parent. I don't work full-time for the school district, and I struggle to make ends meet with a very small salary. My health care got bumped up by $100, which eroded out my paycheck every single month. So I've lost $100 every single month. But I'm here to talk about, I read in the paper about the harbor wanting to propose new taxes. I've heard about other new taxes. As you know, we're a poor county, and any new taxes hurt us. So what I want to do is show you the little box. Okay, there's a box, and inside that box is what everybody usually does, and that is new taxes when budget fiscal problems arise. But let's think outside the box. So for the school district, I've been searching for a way to reduce the monetary output of certain things like electrical use and utilities, and I found a friend here who's going to talk here in a second, and he has a program which I have put through to my supervisors which reduces the electrical cost by using free solar. Now, he has sent you all the same thing through email, and what this does is a free program to reduce your electrical use. They give you a discount, and so for instance with the school district we pay almost $1 million per year in just electrical use. So if they went with this program, they would save the first year $100,000. That could be used, kept in their budget and used for something else. So I don't know what the budget is for the county, but those same numbers occur for the county. So instead of thinking about raising taxes with the harbor or with the county, or even with the city, we should be looking at other ways first to reduce the pain, what our fiscal pressures are, without having to lay off employees, without having to tax more of the people in this county who are struggling. Because I know a lot of people, and everybody I know is struggling to make ends meet. And it doesn't matter if they're renting or if they own property. There's a lot of people struggling. There's only a few people who are doing well off in this county, and the rest of us aren't. And I'm doing my best to try and make it, and it's a struggle with 2 kids on my own. And but his program, I think you should look at it. I think you should think about that first option. The harbor should look at it too. And if we do need to raise taxes, well, guess what? They may need to be less, which will be much nicer. And thank you for taking my comments. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning, County Board of Supervisors. Let me put my glasses on. My name is Anthony Fogelman. I'm a recent transplant from Asheville, North Carolina. And I moved to Crescent City early this year. and I represent a one-of-a-kind company. Our company is called Free Commercial Solar. It's a national turnkey commercial solar power project development company. I advocate the use of solar photovoltaics. Specifically, I work to demystify photovoltaics that we and future generations may enjoy greater prosperity, abundant pure water, as well as clean and healthy environments. According to the Solar Energy Industry Association, the cost to install solar in the USA dropped 70% since 2010. One needn't use long-range vision to see the benefits any longer. In California, the movement to go solar is gaining traction, where the average payback period is under 8 years. Another way to say that is that it takes 8 years of electric bills to buy a system that will generate all your electricity for 40 years or more, using nothing but sunlight. This represents a 5-time return on your investment, making clear economic sense. Perhaps you heard the news. It's cheaper now to make energy from the sun than with coal or other dirty fuels, even without considering the unintentional yet no less terrible environmental consequences of the latter. I believe it's good news for the people of Del Norte County. Should you embrace solar, you'll get paid to contribute to a healthy environment. A common misconception suggests Del Norte County just doesn't get enough sunny days for solar to work. One need but know that solar photovoltaics works differently than passive solar, using the sun's ultraviolet rays versus its radiant heat. In fact, when you consider the main factors of temperature and sunshine, solar panels in Crescent City should outperform the same panels in Seattle or San Francisco. Although the 1,300 solar panels on Walmart aren't visible, they are nonetheless offsetting Walmart's energy usage. We make it easy for municipalities to go solar. We design and manage development of large-scale solar projects for qualifying entities that wish to save on electricity, all with no money out of pocket. A pool of investors, constituting $2 billion, bid on our projects. Each project is then bid on again by national EPCs, engineering, procurement, and construction companies, to get the best deal possible for taxpayers. The county would receive a 10% savings on electricity or more, increasing 2 points each year. After 7, 10, or 13 years, a discounted system is purchased for even greater savings of 90% or more. If Del Norte County qualifies for our program, and I have no reason to believe they would not, taxpayers would not have to wait to save 10% or more on the cost of their county's energy. According to Sierra Club, 47 cities, 4 counties, and 1 state set the goal to transition to 100% renewable energy. I submit a decision to save money needn't wait for grandiosity such as this. The county can simply make a decision to save money and submit an electric bill. Our developer team will deliver an LOI which can be voted upon. It seems like a short and easy steps to me. Would the supervisors and taxpayers both not agree? I'd love to take this discussion to the next level. Can we make an agenda item so that we can lay out details for a plan? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. You have a question?
Supervisor Gitlin.
Yes, I do. Anthony, you're bringing in a very sobering fact to us about the progress of solar power, that it's come of age. And that's what I've met with you before, and we've discussed this. And Walmart has made this switch.
Yes.
And obviously, they're doing it to save money and increase their profit.
Correct.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see this discussed in some kind of a forum where we can have a full presentation about the possibility of the county moving over to this free energy. I don't know what the cost would be to set up the panels. I mean, that's considerable, and I don't know the financing available, but that would be explained in some kind of a presentation. I imagine there are some programs. I'm going to bring this up at CSAC at our upcoming meeting for a future discussion, but I'd like to see you come back here, not just you and your company, but others who practice in this area.
Absolutely.
To have an ongoing discussion about the reality of moving into a new age, with Del Norte County setting the stage to save us some money.
Absolutely.
And I have to look at the budget. I'm not familiar with what our yearly energy cost is. I'm sure Mr. Serena can enlighten me on that, but this is something that I think needs to be discussed. So I'd like to see Mr. Fogelman and others brought back in some kind of a presentation before our board.
I think Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yeah, not a question, just a comment on the direction that I would point you to, and that would be to do a presentation to future facilities which we've had a presentation, what was it, a year or so ago, Jay? Identically the same program, I think, that we're talking about. As a matter of fact, I think the harbor is doing something, if I'm not mistaken. But all we had was an initial presentation. We asked to get real dollars. The county provided the real dollars, what the real savings were, and I asked that Pacific Power also be brought into the discussion. So if you're going to bring this back, bring it back to future facilities, get the information from our maintenance, is that who has our building maintenance, make sure that we have real numbers and we know what we're dealing with. The company that we talked to never came back after I made those requests. So.
That would be my initial request, would be to be in a position to supply real numbers, as would any EPC, this engineering, procurement, and construction companies. There are commercial solar power, what we call providers, that exist in California that would be interested in this project. However, ours goes out to bid to national EPCs.
Yeah,
so I would expect
like I said,
that
you kind of need to bring this to future facilities.
Sure.
Because there's an issue with where you put the panels,
right.
How much room there is, where they're going to be located. So all that information needs to be brought to us,
Yes.
and that needs to go to future facilities.
Wonderful.
So, and then we would take a recommendation to the board from there.
Okay.
Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Supervisor. Public comment. Good morning.
Morning, Jesse Davis, 3rd District. And just on the solar panels, I think it's a great idea. I have some friends in the solar panel contracting business who've done some work for schools, and it works out. It's a win-win. It's a no-brainer, and it's also an opportunity for to make some work for local contractors if they're included in the process. I just wanted to talk for just a quick second about the Cannabis Working Group that we had our meeting on October 30th, I think it was. And I think it went well. It was a chance for everybody to kind of get to know each other, and everybody seems to get along. And I think we want to try to find a way to create an agenda for the next meeting that we can post publicly so that people know, what we plan on talking about. We talked about just the general structure of how we might want to form the group. Talked about possibly forming subcommittees in order to get more things done. The time frame is such that meeting for a couple hours once a month or so probably won't do it. We need to branch off to really get more things done. And then I'd like to just discuss hemp maybe if that's separate when we talk about item 6. If I should talk about it now. Item 6 was pulled for discussion.
It was pulled for discussion.
Hemp, so I don't know if that's a separate time to discuss that.
Actually, we're going to roll into it right now, Jesse.
Okay.
And you're certainly welcome to comment again on item 6 if you'd like.
Okay, I'll just wait till then.
And I was going to have our CEO give a brief report on what transacted at that last meeting so we could keep the community up to speed.
Super.
Before we add or not add names to the rolls. CEO?
Well, Jesse touched on a couple of things that happened there. Yes, it was, there was some housekeeping that was done. Mr. Davis was chosen to be the chair, and we also have a vice chair, primarily just to guide the individual meetings and the agendas as they come up. The first meeting was agendized, and we did have members of the public. We're going to probably then move that site into the board chambers because of the numbers that were at that meeting, as well as the size of the committee and staff. There were a lot of individual opinions discussed. There were a lot of individual ideas that were thrown on the table. I think that was very advantageous to the people that are on the committee as well as staff. The exchange of information at that meeting based on what their opinions were was nice to hear. They all know where they're coming from. And as the board understands, that committee is an advisory committee to the Board of Supervisors and will return to the board with a consolidated either a draft ordinance or draft ordinances that the board can consider. The board was very clear that they would like to see a well-rounded committee that will bring back information that staff will provide also, once we have more information, and staff can then put numbers to what it might cost for a draft ordinance. It'll be an ongoing process. It's going to take some time. And there, as these issues come up and they have these debates, we'll see how those come out of the committee, but they will be a consolidated report back to the Board of Supervisors, not individuals.
Great. Thank you, Jay. One of the reasons I pulled this is that there's been a great deal of interest coming after we've already formed the committee to have members of the public join in this conversation that may or may not shape policies of this board and our ordinance in the future specific to cannabis. And one of those members was Robert Westbrook. And then in addition, at the city council meeting last week, there was a great deal of discussion by the city about potentially reopening their ordinance. And at that time, members of our cannabis working group were there, and they said, might be a dang good idea to also have somebody from the city sitting on this working group. It was a good idea. I believe we are too small of a community to be operating in our own little silo, our own little bubble. And if we're not on the same page in coordinating our activities, if the county decides to do one thing and the city decides to do something else, and those lines get crossed somewhere down the road, it could present a great bit of conflict for the community and how we move forward. And so the more communication, the better on this working group. And I think the suggestions that were made by some of the members of our working group were well heeded. And that's why I also offered at the time to have the suggestion to add somebody from the city staff to this working group. I appreciate the time and energy that the working group is putting into this. I know it's going to be a long process. There are going to be opinions on all sides of this issue, pro and con. Right now, the well-rounded nature, it's not so well-rounded. The way the committee essentially was set up was with mostly a lot of county folks to help advise and be a neutral country in this conversation, but then we have advocates on this committee, and we have a great deal more advocates than we do people that don't want to see medical or recreational marijuana in our community at this time. So as this balance begins to unfold and opinions begin to be weighed and batted back and forth in discussion, we'll see how things roll out. But I want you to be aware of this, board, as we make this decision today, that at this point, the addition of the city member would make sure that communication and coordination continue to take place between our two bodies, and then with the interest of another official or community member in the ag industry that had an interest specifically in hemp, as you saw in his discussion, his letter of request to us. I don't know if you have any comments on that suggestion, but I'd like to open it up for public comment on this item only. Item number 6. Jesse, if you want to weigh in again, you're certainly welcome to.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interest in hemp production here. Probably, I would say there's more interest among people who are capitalized and ready to go to produce hemp than there is for the drug side of cannabis. So it's definitely warrants consideration by the county, and I wouldn't miss the opportunity to participate in hemp production. California hemp law lays it out real clear and simple. And I sent an email to the board. I hope that you had a chance to read the legal opinion from county counsel, and he also makes it pretty simple and clear. It's easy to understand. The county doesn't play a big role in hemp regulation. It's not specifically clear if the county can even do anything. The state has a working group like ours at the state level to deal with the hemp question. They have hemp industry experts and state regulators, and they're trying to figure out how and when to kick it off. But it won't involve state licensing under the Bureau. It's not going to be the same kind of regulatory structure at all. It's totally different. The farmer will go and register with the county ag commissioner to do their project. There's no limit on the scale. There's actually a minimum on the scale. And then there's some simple rules that go with it. But I just want to make sure the focus of the cannabis working group kind of stays clear. I'm not sure, as Joel has opined, I don't think that it's within the scope of the cannabis working group to deal with hemp regulation. If there are any conflicts between them, which I don't think that there are, that could come up. But I think that It's a big enough thing, I think, for the county to focus on somewhat separately. It's a very separate concerns, and all the work that's going to go into cannabis regulation separate from hemp is extremely detailed, lots of public nuance, lots of different levels that really isn't there with hemp. And so I think that it will just end up being sort of a distraction. And so we have Kurt Miller on the group, who is a hemp advocate. I haven't heard him talk about wanting to get into the business on any other level. And so that's there already. I just wanted to make sure that that's clear. The board understands that it's not really within the scope of the county necessarily. And just to make sure that the focus is honest, I guess. You know, if somebody, I definitely welcome additional members, so does everybody of the public, regardless of their viewpoint, even if their viewpoint is just to not have cannabis, period. But that should be laid out honestly, not as somebody who is coming in as a hemp advocate, but really what they're there to do is express how they don't want any cannabis other than hemp. So that's kind of where I wanted to go with it. And if it really is just about talking about hemp in the county, then it's simple. Then let's do it. Let's grow hemp. We can do it this year as soon as the commission at the state level is ready to go.
Thank you, Jesse. Public comment.
Hello again.
Please state your name again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Paul Senishin. About the hemp, okay, let's be clear. Hemp is not a drug, and let's look at history. Hemp was used for centuries, many centuries. The U.S. Navy military used hemp on their ships, ropes. That was the best thing to use. So as far as hemp production, I've ran into other people in this county who are planning on that issue of growing it specifically for non-recreation or cannabis use, but as for as a manufacturer to give to clothing manufacturers here who are here locally in Northern California and Oregon. So as far as hemp goes, that we should be looking at as an economic industry that we can bring to this county, not only just growing, but also clothing manufacturing. So that's another outlet we can bring. Manufacturing jobs are closing down left and right across America. This is something we could bring here to our county with our economics. As far as the medical side, I know a lot of people who are in need of their cannabis for their medical uses. I have friends, close friends up in Gasky who have been needing it for their recovery through cancer treatments. They have no intent on leaving. They have no intent on stopping their usage of hemp or cannabis for their medical uses. No matter what happens, they're going to be like, well, sorry, it's outlaw. It's a law in California, and if the county does it, well, that's fine. I'm still going to use it. So, I understand it's a difficult issue for some people, but we have to look at the facts as far as where it's going to. With a lot of the people are going to continue to use it, and the way I look at it, it's actually better to regulate its use and to oversee its use instead of shoving it underground. And because people are going to still do it, and we know that the county and the sheriff's department cannot have enough law enforcement to take care of it. And the reason I voted for it too was to get the darn cartels out of our forests. That's what I wanted to do. I would work for the Forest Service and the Park Service, and I assisted the sheriffs in cleaning up our forests here in Del Norte County in previous years, and it was a mess. The kind of junk that was out there, the fertilizers that are poisoning our forests, the clear cutting that went on. So thank you again.
Okay, any additional public comment on this item? We'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. And this again is to approve and appoint Robert Westbrook as a public member to the Cannabis Working Group and approve and appoint a member of the city staff to the Cannabis Working Group. Do we have a motion?
So
have a couple of comments.
Please.
I agree with Jesse. I did read your email and the concerns, and I want to make sure that the working group is keeping
Focused.
focused, exactly, on cannabis only. If hemp needs to be a different discussion, then we need to have it. But this group was formed specifically to come back to us on regulations or suggestions for recreational and medical. So I want to make sure that happens. And then I'm still kind of confused about the city. I get what you're saying, Chris, but now we're inviting a city employee to make decisions regarding county or just suggestions?
No, and this is more of an effect to keep them informed. Oftentimes, and like you know, in our coordination committee that you and Supervisor Berkowitz have just recently started communications on combined services, we know potentially there could be an ordinance that rolls out in the county and potentially an ordinance that rolls out in the city specific to cannabis use within our area. And there shouldn't be any confusion in how that information is communicated. And I want to make sure, based on what I heard roll out at the city council meeting last week, is that there's some alignment in how our ordinances roll out. And if strictly from the perspective of having somebody participate, whether they're in the audience or participating, but I wanted to ensure that they are participating in some way, shape, or form, I think adding them to the working group allowed for that participation to be actually mandated by the city.
So you believe their complete ban is going to go away?
Based on
they're
the
going to...
Based on the discussion at the city council meeting, and I see the heads nodding of those that were here, that's exactly what every member of the city council was considering the other night, last Monday, is that to reconsider their current ban. And so I want to make sure that if our working group has a discussion on this and there is some alignment in what does or does not roll out, that that communication's had. I don't want there to be any confusion when we only have a city, 1.7 square mile city in the middle of this larger county doing something completely different than what the county intends to do or not do.
Well, but they are right now. They're completely banned, and we're
Yep.
talking about
Yep.
regulation. So
So
they are
that's-
completely different. So until I see that they change that, or
Well, that was the direction, is now they're investigating, and they have directed their community development person, Eric Taylor, to now investigate. And that's, I think, part of his investigation would be coordinating and communicating within this working group environment. But it could be done another way, potentially. And this is one way that I thought would be fair and informative to the city.
And I don't think we're that far off from them. We've instituted an interim ban until we get this all resolved. So I don't know that we're not basically on the same page. I have a motion. I'll make the motion that we approve Robert Westbrook and a city member.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion from the board? Okay, Kylie, could you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. All right, we're going to move to our 10:15 timed agenda item, which is adopt findings and approve a modified road improvement standard with conditions for parcels off of Colson Lane. That's APN number 106-111-13. Mr. Barnes, good to see you again.
It's good to be here. Jim Barnes, County Engineer. Roy and Nancy Webster have a property off of Colson Lane, which is off of Wonder Stump Road, and access to that property
Your district.
would be provided from an easement that was given by an adjacent property owner. It's a 30-foot wide easement. And so the request is a modified road standards, which would allow the 30-foot easement instead of the required 50-foot easement. That would maintain the existing 12-foot wide road instead of the 20-foot with shoulders that is required. The granting of the easement had a condition that they leave the road as is. There currently are 5 properties served by that road, 5 houses. One, so that the Websters would be the 6th, and then there's one lot that is yet to be built on that could access off of Wonder Stump or off of Colson. So We met with CAL FIRE. They looked at it and thought that they could live with the road as is if there was a turnaround provided on the Webster property. And so that would be a condition if the board felt it should be, to have a turnaround on that property if the narrow road was allowed.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Barnes? Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused, Jim, not unusual. But with the drawing that was submitted by the applicant and what is depicted from the Davis survey, and as well as what's on the parcel maps, do they end up dedicating an easement or a right-of-way then that's on their property for the turnaround, for the driveway?
Yeah, I think we could get them to dedicate the turnaround on the Webster property that would be just adjacent, you know, would be right on the roads that's there now.
Well, and that gets to my question where I can't, and maybe the lines are just really faded, but where I see it coming off of Colson Lane and going up towards the house, those lines seem to be erased, but there appears to be the driveway going to the back of the property, like maybe there's access there. So I'm just a little bit confused about that. And then I don't really see where it says a 3-point turn. I'm assuming that's where they're wanting to put the turnaround, and I don't know how big that is. I don't know. It's just a little confusing to me. And the reason that I'm saying this is we're kind of getting out there on these exceptions just a little bit. We just had an exception that we did up in the Smith River area, and we required, I think, 10-foot roadway and 2-foot shoulders. So that's 14 foot wide, and now we're saying, oh, maybe 8 or 10 feet is okay. I'm a little bit concerned about us, not having something to fall back on. And I understand the property owners, that is my district, and I'll probably hear about it. But I'm just confused on, as we get more people that are going to be accessing these roads and they start to squeezing down. I'm not trying to be against anybody for developing. We certainly want that to happen. But I think when you get down to that 8 or 10 or 11 foot range, that's a little bit narrow with no shoulders. So I'm just curious on how that all comes about. And I'm not sure on the letter that we got from the Department of Forestry, are they the jurisdiction? Are they not in a fire district out there?
They are, they're in the CAL FIRE area, and but they're also in the
Fort Dick.
Yeah,
Fort Dick. So I'm kind of thinking we should have a letter from the Fort Dick Fire Department also, which we've always had in the past, with any of these modifications that come to the road. It may go along with just whatever they're saying. I'm sure that if they have a turnaround, that's the big thing. Cars passing on a straight road like that with good visibility is not an issue. I am a little bit concerned about narrowing that roadway down too much, especially when there's, I don't know what you said, five houses accessing that and a possible sixth. Then you're starting to get some traffic, and it's not a problem now. And I don't really want to change the aesthetics of what's there, but it concerns me a little bit.
Yeah, each of these, it would be nice if we had a standard that was good. I mean, a standard. And if we were starting all over, it would make it a lot easier. This was done in '75, and the visibilities are good. When you have a narrow road, people tend to go slower, and communities, when you only have 5 or 6 houses, people like that. They don't like people going too fast on the roads, and so there is a quaintness, a calmness that happens with these narrower roads. And that's why we felt that in this circumstance where you're not going to have any additional homes, where this isn't something that's going to be going out to to a lot more property, that it would be okay. It's easier for all of us when there's just one thing that happens, but so for the people that live there every day, they wanted to keep it like this, which was calmer, more quaint, and so when this building permit came in, that's basically how we went with it, and that's that we said, okay, let's see how the board feels about it.
Yeah, and I'm certainly in agreement with this, especially with the property owners that are now. I don't want to change, get them out of their comfort zone. But it also concerns me about future boards down the road and future owners and, what they think about it. But I have to agree with you a little bit that you don't necessarily want it to look like a road when it's an actual extended driveway.
Yeah.
And have a lot of people down there. So I am in agreement there. And I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Other comments from the board?
I want to kind of follow up with Jerry's saying, is making sure that easement is recorded, because if they sell, and then we think that or not the easement, but the easement, the right-of-way and the turnaround. Because if they sell down the road and all of a sudden the new owners say, well, no, the fire trucks can't come and turn around here.
No, we would make sure that became a recorded easement so that it was a permanent thing there.
And again, I get what you're saying about this too, but as a realtor, the one thing I always say to clients when they're building is like, it depends how they're feeling at the planning department today. There is no universal way. It's true. I hate to say it, but that is reality up here. It depends on where it's at, what the situation is, if it's 5 houses or 6 houses, and can it go more. I'd like to see that tightened up a little bit, and otherwise it is going to come back and bite us in the behind. It absolutely is.
Yeah, it's hard on us.
I know.
Because of the it's nice when we have a standard. We say this is the way we have to do things, and I tend to agree with you. It would be much easier on all of us if we had a little tighter standards. And I don't mean tighter in that they can't be adjusted, but that we understand they're clearer. And like for paving roads, I think it would be better if all these roads, before people sold land, that they knew they had to pave the road so that all the people after them didn't have the dust and the potholes and everything else to deal with. It became part of the cost of doing the project. That makes better sense to me as a engineer and kind of a land developing kind of person, to put that in as part of the cost of the development. And so maybe there's a day coming we can put together a little clearer road standards and maybe a little better standards.
Jim, have the neighbors weighed in on this?
Yes.
And no objections?
Correct.
Thank you.
Supervisor? Okay. Thank you, Jim. Let's go ahead and open it up for public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. What's the board's will? Do we have a motion on the table for this matter?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kylie, could you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. All right, let's go ahead with budget transfer items. Item number 23 and 24 on the agenda, which is budget transfer item 11-01 in the amount of $86,012, and then budget transfer item 11-02, which is in the amount of $3,241.
Move for approval of budget transfer 11-01 and 11-02.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Public comment. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Kylie, can you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. All right. I'm going to go ahead to legislative and budget issues. Consider miscellaneous legislative and budget matters pertinent to the County of Del Norte.
The items below this will address most of the issues for the Board of Supervisors that were either requested or directed to be brought back as well as one other letter. I haven't been additional to that at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. Other items? No? Okay, we'll move on to item number 26. Receive other, no, we won't. How'd that get mixed up, Kylie? Let's go to item number 27 first. Approve and authorize the chair to sign and send a letter addressed to Senator Kamala Harris, urging her to co-sponsor Senate Bill 1027 that extends the Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act of 2000. I think this was brought up by Supervisor Berkowitz, but it's a
Move
good
for
idea.
approval.
We have a motion for approval.
Second.
And a second. Discussion from the board.
I just want to reiterate that Camilla Harris has not signed on to S1027. Of course, this is vital for us. Means over $1 million for our roads and school district. And our other senator has signed on, Senator Feinstein. So hopefully this will remind her how important this legislation is for rural counties.
Thank you, Supervisor. Other comments? Public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. By consensus, can we approve this letter? Sure. Consensus received. We'll move forward with this letter. Okay, item number 28, approve and authorize all 5 members of the Board of Supervisors to sign and send a letter of opposition regarding the Lands Pass program to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife as requested by the Board of Supervisors.
Move for approval.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Okay, let's go ahead and open this up for public comment. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. By consensus, can we move this forward, board?
Yep.
Okay, by consensus, we have it. Kylie will move this item forward. And then item number 29, approve and authorize the chair to sign and send a letter to Senator Feinstein, Senator Harris, Congressman Huffman, urging them to oppose the 21st Century Flood Reform Act, H.R. 2874, that increases costs of National Flood Insurance Program policyholders as requested by the County Administrative Officer. CAO?
For quite some time, we've been getting updates regarding this legislation and the changes in the National Flood Insurance Program, which sets the basis for insurance within flood zones throughout the nation. And the changes that have been made, we've been discussing these with our advocates for many months, and they keep coming back with usually increases in policy amounts for property owners. They talk about repetitive loss. And although Delaware County is not a county that has seen repetitive loss as a practice, what they put in place is going to be a burden on property owners. Just recently there was an amendment within the last few days. It's reflected in the new language. It got a little bit better, but we don't feel that it's gotten to the point now where it takes that burden off of property owners. So the recommendation will be to send these letters out and voice our concerns and hopefully get some better language.
Move for approval.
We have a motion on the table. And a second. Public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Kylie, let's pull the vote on this.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. All right. That brings us to our last item, which is item number 26, board reports. Supervisor Berkowitz, do you mind kicking us off today?
Supervisor Cowan and I met as an ad hoc committee with 2 members of the City Council and began the process of finding areas of agreement where we could work together to find mutual areas of cooperation. Along with other members of this board, I attended the town hall meeting hosted by Senator McGuire. For the second time in 2 weeks, I was the guest of a talk show hosted by a local radio station. I met with the Crescent City, Delaware County Chamber of Commerce, where I met the new interim director. I also attended a chamber mixer at 6 Degrees of Celebration. I participated in 2 conference calls with the National Association of Counties where we discussed the proposed tax plan and how it affects the counties. And I marched in last Saturday's Veterans Day Parade and had a very productive luncheon with the Veterans Memorial Building, at the Memorial Building. Now, Mr. Chairman, in 1996, Congressman Riggs recognized the valuable work of former Congressman Clausen to get the Newton-Drury Highway 101 bypass created, and he was able to name that bypass the Congressman Don Clausen Highway. It was commemorated with a sign that says just that. Since that time, former Congressman Clausen has passed away. Therefore, at this time, I'd like to request that this board send a letter to Caltrans to add the word memorial to the sign so that it would read Congressman Don Clausen Memorial Highway. It would do two things. First, it would end the confusion of those who think that he is still their congressman. And second, it would honor a man who served on this very body as a Del Norte County supervisor and who represented this congressional district for 20 years. So I'd like to see if we can do that by consensus at the next board meeting or add it to the agenda for next board meeting.
Absolutely, we could do both. Kylie, could you please take note of that?
And that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Had a NORTEC meeting over in Anderson. That's the Northern Rural Technical and Employment Consortium. Made it back in time to go to Senator McGuire's town hall meeting. I was invited to do a presentation at the Joint Committee on Fisheries and Aquaculture that Senator McGuire chairs in Eureka, and the meeting was in Eureka, so I went down there for that. I went down to the harbor, the Marine Protected Area snapshot that was put on by the Department of Fish and Wildlife, kind of outlining what they've done as far as MPAs in California. It was a very interesting meeting. We have been involved with that since its inception. Zach Larson was our point on that, which he did a great job in establishing those, or help establishing those along with the stakeholders group. So it was interesting to see how that's all unfolding. More data to be gathered, and it was very, very interesting. Had a meeting with staff and the Department of Fish and Wildlife having to do with a breach of Lake Earl, as well as the Watchman Station that I proposed. A lot more on that. Had a Border Coast Regional Airport Authority meeting. Things are moving along there. The slab is being poured for the terminal. We're working on the grant application for the alternate ESA program. That seems to be going well. Had a phone conference along with staff with Melissa from the Coastal Commission, having to do with our Pack Shores Watchman Station. And since then, it has been approved by the Coastal Commission, so I'm very happy to report out on that. So we're moving forward with that. That's all good. Had a conference call with Dungeness Crab Gear Working Group, which has to do with whale entanglements. We had a special local transportation commission meeting to approve some budget changes, and I went to down in Marina, California, went to a Fish and Game Commission Marine Resource Committee meeting, dealing what I was down there for was dealing with mostly the pink shrimp, but it was a very interesting meeting, a lot more informal than the customary Fish and Game Commission meetings, where they allow you a limited amount of time to speak. You're able to speak on issues until they get tired of you talking, then they pretty well shut her down. But it was very interesting. Certainly glad I went. and was able to speak on some of those issues, and that was it for me.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair. I attended also the ad hoc committee joint services with Supervisor Berkowitz, where Jay Serena updated the group on all the current and past joint efforts that have been between the city and the county. So it was a good stepping off point to understand what's been going on in the past and where we could go in the future. Had a meeting with Jan Wortman. We were discussing Klamath and how to incorporate Klamath businesses into our community plan as a whole. Had a meeting with Senator McGuire when he was in town on the No Place Like Home. The application for the technical grant has been submitted. There was some adjustments that Tony had to do last week, but we're going forward with that. We're continuing to meet with other counties and groups that have already done this so that we're not reinventing the wheel and just trying to figure out what's going to work best for Del Norte County. I also, along with everyone else, attended the town hall, Senator McGuire's town hall while he was here. We had a Visitors Bureau meeting. We finalized the RFP that we sent out. We're submitting it to over 20 different companies, hoping to find someone who can promote Del Norte County and do it in the way that we would like to see fit, and help us bring the next new visitor to Del Norte County. Had a city-county healthcare district 2x2. We continue to have discussions regarding the high healthcare cost in Del Norte County and how it's best to address that. In previous conversations with Senator McGuire, it's been suggested that we take the concerns to the Joint Legislative Audit Committee. We're currently working on what's the best way to do that with his office and formulate a letter, which I hope to bring back in December. Had a meeting with Charlie Helms from the Harbor and Mayor Enscore on some ideas on how we could possibly bring more visitors into the harbor. A lot going on down there. On a more personal note, I got to drive a group of boys from the high school varsity soccer team. They made it into the CIF playoffs, so I got to drive the group down to Sebastopol week before last. They did lose, but I got to say they played a great game. They were seated against the number 4 team in the state, and they held it together. Came back, attended the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority meeting, kind of what Hemmingson was saying. We're moving along and still have a target date of hopefully March 1st on bringing in the new airline is where we're at right now on that. Attended and worked the Taste of the Holidays, which is Sunrise Rotary's big fundraiser. I do that every year. It's a good event. It's a fun event. Had a meeting with Kimmy Scott to catch up on what's going on with the city. Had a juvenile justice meeting. Progress with communications with probation is much, much better, and so things are moving along there. Also, along with Chair Howard, attended the Hmong Cultural Awareness class. The class is really informative. I think it's really helpful understanding a large population that we have in our community and what their cultural differences are and how they do, what they do, and that was really a good class to be. And that's it for me. Thank you,
Supervisor. Supervisor Kitlin.
Yes, thank you. I participated in a Northwest California Resource Conservation Development conference call, which was held in Weaverville, discussed financial matters and the budget for 2017-18. Also approved, the group approved 4 grant agreements, all in Trinity County. Also attended Senator McGuire's town hall at Joe Hamilton School. Also participated in the 2x2, where this district heard from healthcare professional Jane Clark, who shared with the group, this is not new news here, the extreme shortage of healthcare professionals who serve in our county. Dr. Duncan, Greg Duncan, expressed his concern with the lack of transparency ongoing at Sutter Coast. As you all know, Sutter Coast is a non-profit entity and public charity which enjoys a level of privacy under the law which may interfere with the community's right to know how operations are conducted. And I would agree with that observation. Mr. Chairman, we've invited CEO Mitch Hanna to address our board, to address some of the concerns expressed by some of our citizens who called us and appeared before our commission. I'd like to see if we can put that back on track and re-invite the chairman of the CEO, there are some serious matters to concern, and perhaps having Mr. Hanna here directly will offer some clarity to that. We met in special meeting the Del Norte Local Transportation Commission to approve Caltrans Public Transportation Modernization Funding. That's part of Prop 1B monies. It's a lot of it, $317, almost $318,000, which is directed for Redwood Coast Transit Authority facilities and bus improvements. The meeting was necessary because specific deadlines of these funds needed to be allocated before year's end. This past Friday, I participated in Veterans Day activities and a luncheon at the VFW Post. Met with Pacific Power, Frontier, and Spectrum Communications regarding constituent calls and collapsing trees which are resting on the power lines along Washington Boulevard on East Washington, and those three entities, it was determined who's going to take care of it, and those three entities are dealing with that and have that corrected soon. Our volunteers from Take a Bite Out of Blight conduct 2 separate projects involving graffiti removal, and did some IT training offered by the county, mandatory training. Was also updated by Community Development Engineering Department regarding the block grant sewer project connection at West Park. Happy to report by month's end, all 35, I think it's 37 units at West Park will be connected to the sewer line. Job well done between the city and the county. Answered a number of calls regarding the removal of the debris at Fred Haight Drive, the fire in April. One of the reasons for this long delay in remedying this condition has existed since April is the possibility of asbestos in the remains of the old Pink Hotel property. I'm pleased to report that an asbestos survey team has been selected, and by the end of this month, an inspection will be complete and we'll have a better idea about the costs involved in abating that eyesore there. Met with Warden Ducard at Pelican Bay and his staff to discuss and hear some of the ongoing programs in place in an effort to reduce prison recidivism. A recent survey released by the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation shows that recidivism is actually going down, and they attribute this to these ongoing programs which are in place as much as 6 years. Simple fact remains that 90% of CDCR inmates are going to be paroled, and from our 34 institutions, including Pelican Bay, and they'll ultimately be coming back into some of our neighborhoods. So the consensus is, the opinion is that we must invest in this population, which will improve the likelihood that those convicted of these crimes will not recidivate, and to do nothing, and some folks say throw away the key, if you will, is not responsible. Finally, on a personal note, Angela and I traveled down to San Antonio and Lackland Air Force Base, watch our grandson and 682 other fine young men and women graduate from the Air Force Academy Basic Training and elevate to airman status.
Thank you. It was a busy couple weeks for all with that break. Glad to see the board was extremely active. And it was the same for me too. And just to continue on some of the discussion that Supervisor Gitlin had specific to the Fred Haight Drive properties, the county is making a great deal of progress out there. We are communicating with members of the Smith River Neighborhood Watch that do a lot of outreach through Facebook to help keep community members posted. I know cleanup specifically will start this week on Altus, and Bond has been waiting a very long time to get that project started. So that only leaves one property that the county has had ruling on to abate, and that's the old Pink Hotel. This is something that could potentially cost us, guys, so I want that to be on your radar screen in the future. Obviously, the community of Smith River doesn't want to see that sit there through the winter, but with any luck, we won't find asbestos sitting out there, and it could make our cost of cleanup far cheaper. As mentioned, the conversations around the town hall meeting by Senator McGuire went extremely well. I thought the conversation that took place was robust. More importantly, showed a great deal of partnership, not only with our state and the direction that the senator would like to see Del Norte County go, and more important, open communication at the state level to see rural issues addressed and put on as a priority, but also between the city and the county. The partnerships and the movement that we've seen take place between our two entities has been extremely important the last couple of years, because I can remember times, like most of you, when the city and the county had very little cooperation or coordination. So it's glad to see that communication change. Great deal of discussion around the camp park issues and issues associated with our campground hosts. Also had a meeting with Bob Black, General Counsel for the Tolowa Dene Nation, specific to some projects they're looking at. Also attended the Chamber Mixer for 6 Degrees of Celebration. Congratulations again to Billy Kay and her significant others, including her young daughter, on being open for such a great length of time. Attended the Republican Women's Luncheon and gave a presentation there. Also had a great deal of conversation with Stafford Laird, Deputy Director for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, trying to get them to release to the county the draft management plan. We believe strongly that there's a relationship there, that the county could see this draft, and I know we've sent a letter to them to see if we could use our power of coordination to get this draft, but have yet to receive a response, I'm sure. And then in addition, on the Lands Pass program, it's the state's belief that even though the Lands Pass program will not affect those with a fishing license and hunting license, it should, for bird watchers and other environmental type groups that use those facilities, they need to pay their fair share. That's their reasoning going forward. I don't know if we'll see a change. However, the letter that we sent out today as a board, I think will show the county's opinion towards this issue. Attended a meeting with the Building Healthy Communities Program Initiative Leadership Team. Also attended, as Supervisor Hemmingson and Gitlin mentioned, the Dilnert Local Transportation Commission meeting. Attended the first 5 Family Resources Commission meeting, did a gender review, and as Supervisor Cowan mentioned, the Hmong Cultural Awareness, where Kuvu had presented for 3 hours. It was extremely effective discussion. I know this community program will be rolled out not only here to other folks besides electeds. I really encourage the board members to attend if they have an opportunity in the future, knowing that there's a population of 600 plus Hmong in our community, 52 families, for, I can't remember the terminology they used, I believe it was clans, that live here. It behooves us to get to know our neighbors. And I thought the presentation was extremely moving, and really presented a side of the story that I wasn't really aware of, specific to how they came to the United States. Also attended a North Coast Unified Air Quality Management District meeting in Eureka. And on a lighter note, attended Bill and Christine Hartwick's wedding. Congratulations to those two. And the 50th wedding celebration of I call them Shawnito, but it's Constellacion and Cecilia Torres in Smith River this weekend. Congratulations on 50 years of marriage. It's a real celebration, and I've never seen a community of 250 plus come out to celebrate a family, but it's great to see those celebrations in downtown Smith River. And I'll end on a meeting I attended last night at the Del Norte County School District with the high school agricultural classes and all the great steps that Jessica Chamberlain is taking in her new role as the agricultural teacher there to bring agriculture back into our youth programs. It's great to see. And a quick reminder, November 28th, which would be our second board meeting for the month, is currently canceled. We'll all be in attendance at the California State Association of Counties meeting that week in Sacramento. And I look forward to seeing everybody at our first meeting in December. Take care and have a great day.